Welcome back inside Gillette Stadium, everybody. My name is Mike Petraglia, joined once again by Ryan Hannable, Patriots writer for the It Is What It Is blog on WEEI.com, an overall football expert for the brand WEEI. Ryan, we heard Patriots Director of Personnel Nick Caserio address the media today on what the needs are for this team, or at least he was asked about it. And he was also asked right off the top by the Boston Herald's Jeff Howe, what about Malcolm Butler? What about Jimmy Garoppolo? Because those are the two players that really could impact what the Patriots do with their 7 draft picks.
Yeah, he didn't really give much. I mean, he kind of said he gave the typical, we're going to do what's best for the football team, and I guess that's what they're going to do. So, I mean, I guess you really can't play into what's going to happen with Jimmy and what's going to happen to Malcolm. I guess from my perspective, I'm under the assumption that they're both going to stay, and I think that as of right now, unless something really changes, that they'll be picking at number 72 overall, and they'll go from there. Because, I mean, if you look at the roster, they don't really need to add a specific player. I think they're in pretty good shape. So it's not like they're in dire need to move up back into the first round.
We have a lot to get to right here and right now, but let's address Jimmy Garoppolo and Malcolm Butler, because those are the two names everybody really cares about in terms of how they could potentially impact the draft. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is more of a certainty, because you either get a can't turn down trade offer from somebody like the Cleveland Browns, San Francisco 49ers, Chicago Bears, or you don't, and he stays. Malcolm Butler is a different situation altogether. Maybe he signs his tender sheet by this Friday, maybe he doesn't, and there are a lot of variables at play. I asked Nick Caserio about that today, and he said, look, we always have a plan based on whatever the situation is, and with Malcolm Butler, I think the situation's a little more complicated.
Yeah, you're right, because it's not necessarily like Jimmy Garoppolo, it's the Patriots' decision. With Malcolm Butler, there's the Malcolm Butler element that's involved, because right now he's really not property of the team, considering he hasn't signed his tender. I mean, I will say Friday, as you mentioned, the deadline for offer sheets to be signed. So once he doesn't get any offer sheets, which it doesn't appear likely that he will, he probably has no choice but to sign the tender, because he has to sign the tender, because if he doesn't, he can't even be traded. So I think come Friday, he'll sign the tender, and then that gives the Patriots sort of a week to see what they could potentially get for him, via trade. But if I'm a team, and I just don't see the need to give up compensation to the Patriots and sign Malcolm Butler to a long-term deal when they can just wait another year and then sign him as an unrestricted free agent and not give anything up. So if I had to guess right now, I think Malcolm Butler stays.
A couple of numbers to throw out there today. 50 and 75, between 50 players and 75 players is really all the Patriots are considering going into the draft, and that raised some eyebrows of the media corps inside the press room here on Tuesday. And the other number is 8. That is the number of players visiting Foxboro today as the pre-draft process winds to a close, right in the midst of off-season conditioning and training beginning for the Patriots. Your thoughts on the 50 to 75 number that Nick Caserio threw out? Is that a little low to you?
I guess, especially when you look at what some other teams say around the league. I remember looking at some quotes from the Ravens press conference a couple weeks ago, and they said they had 150 players on their board. So when you go from 50 to 75 to 150, that's a pretty big, drastic change. But I think that's kind of the Patriots' mentality. They identify who they want. I think they have a specific criteria that maybe other teams are more open. So yeah, that number is pretty low, especially when you consider how deep the draft is and how many 7 rounds. There's a lot of players, and 50 to 75 players just isn't that much. But also maybe this year is a little different because they don't have a first or second round pick, and maybe they're not even considering players that they know are going to be gone in the first round.
He was also asked about Joe Mixon, and he is somebody, a running back who has quite the checkered history in college, and whether or not the Patriots would touch him. And the answer was pretty interesting. He did not say no. He said Bill Belichick and the rest of the staff, Nick Caserio and company, have a process that they go through on every single player. In other words, you wouldn't rule a player out, you wouldn't rule a player in.
Yeah, but then I took a step back and remembered the comments Robert Kraft gave to Jeff Howe at the owners' meetings, where he kind of, took a hard stance against domestic violence, and to me that signified that he was off the Patriots' draft board. But to your overall point, I don't think that the Patriots, view specific instances and take players off their draft board. I think they're solely focused on the football mentality, and they'll stick to that.
the whole package, as it were. Obviously, the Patriots are going to have needs, just like every other team, even though the Patriots are coming off their second Super Bowl title in 3 years. And, you know, the consensus is that they need some outside rushing help. Certainly that's an area. Obviously, there's always the chance that they'd take a running back. And also, I think they might be looking at a tight end.
I agree with all those. I think that the defensive end, sort of an edge rusher, hybrid, outside linebacker, defensive end, that's at the top of the list. And I think when you look at the overall draft class, that sort of position is actually pretty deep, which probably does the Patriots a favor that they could potentially get a solid player in the third round that maybe might go higher in other years. So I think that's something to look for. And then the other positions, like you mentioned, they could potentially want to draft maybe a Rob Gronkowski replacement down the road. I don't know if necessarily this is the year, considering they're picking in the third round, but it definitely is something to look for. And then at the running back spot, we've definitely seen that they're sort of in that market for one with the guys that they brought in and also their pre-draft visits. So maybe that's a position that they look for too. But I think if you're going to identify who I think they might take in the third round, the edge rusher has to be at the top of the list.
Yeah, I would think so too. Just to recap, the Patriots have 2 picks in the third round, 1 in the fourth, 2 in the 5th round, and a 6th in the 7th for a grand total of 7 picks. Obviously, the trade with Brandon Cooks traded away the 32nd pick overall, the last pick in the first round. So the Patriots, as of right now, as we speak, don't have a first or a second round pick. Let's move on to some of the other news of the day. We mentioned that the off-season conditioning program actually began here officially on Monday, on Patriots Day, while everybody was running the Boston Marathon and going to Bruins playoff games and the Red Sox Patriots Day game. The Patriots were down here getting their off-season underway. We got a chance to talk to Rex Burkhead, a very versatile back, an intriguing case, I think, a guy that's from the Cincinnati Bengals who signed a 1-year deal, a free agent deal, to come here to New England. I had the chance to ask Burkhead how much it means to go from a team like the Cincinnati Bengals, where he's had playoff experience, to a team where he can compete to go to the Super Bowl, and that is the expectation.
Yeah, and I think another interesting answer he gave was that he signed with the Patriots because of the way that they use their backs in so many different ways, that he could, on one play, he could line up in the backfield, and then on the next play, he could line up in the slot, and then on fourth down, he could play special teams. And I think that that was sort of a big reason why he signed with the Patriots. I think he maybe hasn't shown his full potential yet this year for his career because he hasn't been given the opportunity. But when you look at what he did in the Week 17 game last year against the Ravens, he showed that he could be a pretty good back in the NFL, rushing for over 100 yards. So I think it remains to be seen how the Patriots use him. Maybe it depends on if they add another running back to the mix. But I think he could potentially see a big role with this team. It's just a matter of who they add between now and training camp.
Certainly, we always look for connections. Darren Simmons, special teams coach in Cincinnati, and Joe Judge here in New England. Both of them have influences, of course, from Scotty O'Brien. Darren Simmons got his start under Scotty O'Brien way back when in the early 2000s. So there is that connection, and certainly Bill Belichick very aware of that. One more note to bring up, as Nick Caserio was asked about the trip to the White House on Wednesday, and he said the team would be honored and humbled to head down to the White House. Obviously, he was asked whether or not he's aware of any controversy. The players choosing not to go. A lot of players have indicated they'd rather not go. Your thoughts on the eve of the Patriots' trip to the White House on Wednesday?
Yeah, I kind of echo what Nick said. It's a privilege and an honor to be invited to the White House, but he also understands that some individual players and coaches and staff may have some, opinions that they don't want to go, and he respects that, and that's how I feel too. I mean, going to the White House, politics aside, it's an honor, and I think maybe for guys that haven't been there before and haven't experienced that maybe give them more, and makes them want to go more, and maybe other guys who've been there and experienced it before, maybe they're less likely to go. So to me, it's up to the individual player, and I'm not going to knock anyone for going or not going. It's definitely a personal choice and up to that individual player, because in the end, it's up to them to decide.
Also, Nick Caserio said that it is a chance for the guys that work so hard in their scouting department and their personnel department to get rewarded for all the hard work throughout the season. We'll have complete coverage of the Patriots pre-draft process as we roll on to April 28th, 29th, and 30th. Follow all the coverage on the It Is What It Is blog. Our friend here, Ryan Hannable, will definitely have you covered on WEEI.com. Inside Gillette Stadium, he is Ryan Hannable. I'm Mike Petraglia, WEEI.com.